Hi guys, have you ever thought where pottery comes from? It comes from raw, untamed wild clay, which is often closer than you might think. What if I told you with a little effort you can make your own clay creations from the earth beneath your feet? Today we're diving into the world of wild clay to make something really beautiful, to discover it, to test it, and make something useful and sustainable. After heavy rains, I've noticed something interesting happening in the swales on our land. They collect a dense material that forms a thick layer and cracks dramatically as it dries in the sun. Now I can't say for certain if it's clay just yet, but hopefully that's what we're about to find out. When a mixture of clay, sand, dirt, or what we commonly think of as soil combines with water, the fine clay particles will naturally tend to float and settle separately. With any luck, these swales might be naturally generating wild clay right here on our homestead. So here we are at the swale, guys, just right here. The first thing we need to do is test to see whether this is clay. In order to do that, we've got to gather a sample and do a soil test on it. I'll explain more in a minute. Okay, that should do. Let's go and do a soil test. Doopy doopy doo. Now, in order to do a soil test, what we need to do is take a little sample of this and dissolve it in water. So we're going to just put it in a clear water bottle, give it a good shake, try and get all the particles dissolved as much as we can, and then we have to leave it for 24 hours. Leave it overnight until it all separates out into its different layers. So I'm going to give this a good shake for another few minutes, make sure it's all dissolved, and let's check it again in the morning. Hey guys, I just wanted to show you the results of the soil test, which is quite amazing actually. Just what I was expecting to see was different layers of material, a large top layer of clay, and then different layers, maybe just smaller ones. What there actually is, which is quite incredible, is just one pure clay level. So you can see the water separated out at the top and then just clay. Now, just a close up here, I can't see, let's do it from the lights this way, I can't see any other layers. So as far as I can tell guys, that clay is just about 100% pure clay, which is fantastic news for us, easier to process, and the swales are producing quite a lot of it. That's really good news guys. Now it's time to refine this clay into something truly workable. And we start off by breaking the clay into very small fragments, as small as we can get them within reason. This is to help them dissolve in water. The first step is to dissolve the clay completely in water. Once it's fully mixed, I'll pour it through a fine sieve or even a piece of muslin cloth. This process not only removes unwanted debris, but also gives the clay a smoother texture, essential for crafting. After sieving, the mixture is left to settle for a while, allowing the heavier particles to sink and leaving behind clean, usable clay at the bottom. At this stage, patience is key. Once the water is carefully poured off, we'll be left with raw, refined clay ready for the next step. We then leave the sieved clay overnight. The water separates and floats above the clay layer. Once it settles, we'll pour off the water. Then we pour the clay slip into a pillowcase, which will allow the water to drain off slowly and let the clay thicken into a workable consistency. Here I rigged up a sack barrel with the pillowcase tied over a bucket so the water could drain out freely. Separating the drained clay from the pillowcase was just incredibly sticky and messy. Now the next stage is to add something called temper. Now temper is all it is really is just something that helps the moisture spread evenly throughout the clay. It can be anything from sand to old pottery ground up that's not fired to sawdust, anything that helps the moisture spread throughout the clay evenly. Adding temper also stops the pottery from cracking or shrinking when it's drying out or being fired. Adding the temper immediately changed the property of the clay. It went from being a really sticky mess to a very usable substance, and you could see that it was becoming the clay that it should be. Now guys, I think I actually made a mistake here. I started using the clay straight away after adding the temper, and I believe you're supposed to let it rest for up to 24 hours to let the moisture mix thoroughly. I didn't manage to do that. Now as this is the first time that we've done anything like this, we don't have any special tools like a potter's wheel or anything flash like that, so I just decided to use the dog dish to mould the clay into a bowl shape. Now you might be thinking right now that the outcome is a little underwhelming, and I would tend to agree with you. It's doubtful whether this would survive a firing process, and it needs a lot of finishing work and practice to make it look more impressive. But let's put this into perspective. This was an experiment to see if we could find wild clay here on the farmstead and actually make something useful from the earth beneath our feet. Test it to make sure it's clay, process it and actually make something. All of those things we have achieved in a very sustainable way. Moving forward, I know we can refine this process and make useful functional products, which also ticks the creative and artistic strategies we want to incorporate into our life here on the farmstead. Now guys, I readily admit that this is the first time I've ever tried something like this, and a lot of the information came from a very knowledgeable guy called Andy Ward and his channel Andy Ward's Ancient Pottery. I'll add a link in the description to Andy's channel below. So guys, we really hope you enjoyed this video on how to find, process and make something really fantastic out of wild clay. It's the first time we've ever done this, we're really learning, so it was a bit of an experiment, a bit of a fun thing to do. There are different ways of processing clay. You can use the wet method like we did, which took a long time. It took over 4 or 5 days, to be honest. Or for our clay in particular, it may be better to use the dry method. So we'll talk more about that another time. But we really hope you enjoyed the video. Speak soon. Take care.